Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. Continue reading from Imam Al-Ghazali's Juwar al-Quran wa Durra the Juz al-Quran spares, or reading from Surah Al-Hadid, Iron. And we have reached in our reading verse 20. An initial translation or interpretation of this verse is that know that this world life is no more than play, amusement, luxury, mutual boasting, and competition in wealth and children. It's like rain that causes plants to grow to the delight of the planters, but later the plants dry up and you see them wither away. Then they are reduced to chaff, and in the hereafter there will be either severe punishment or forgiveness and pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whereas the life of this world is no more than delusion and enjoyment, or the delusion of enjoyment. This would be the one more verse that Imam Ghazali chose. If you remember at the beginning of the surah, we said that he chose verse 10 and then 18 to 24. And obviously Imam Ghazali, when he chooses these verses to be pairs, like to highlight the importance of these verses, and they should be interpreted. Some of these things are ongoing categories, but the examples might change from time to time. And without basically reading, inshallah, we read and we try to highlight some of the examples. أعوذ بالله السميع من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اعلموا أنما الحياة الدنيا لعب ولهو وزينة وتفاخر بينكم وتكاثر في الأموال والأولاد كمثل غيث أعجب الكفار نباته ثم يهيج فتراه مصفرا ثم وفي الآخرة عذاب شديد ومغفرة من الله ورضوان وما الحياة الدنيا إلا متاع الغرور. If we choose one word to build delusion, not understanding the reality of things. This life is the where you sow the seeds and where you harvest in the hereafter. Mazra'atul akhirah. Of course, you need to tend to your needs. That's given. But nevertheless, if we look at our activities, why we do what we do and why we purchase what we purchase, why we consume, how much of this life is about spirituality and how much of it is about materialism. Play. If we look at play and see how much do we play, not as individuals. Talk about societies. You have play as in sports. It's very important for people to be active. That's one thing. It's a must. And part of the Islamic worldview, part of the tradition, we are encouraged to teach our children swimming, archery, and horse riding. And one can talk about conditions to be fulfilled. It's not okay for women to be wearing to expose their bodies in the name of sport. That's one thing. And it's I don't understand why the women wear less even when they run marathons or they play beach ball compared to the men, and they are never ahead. They wear less, much less when they run, and men will always obviously win. They are way ahead of the women. No, this is not a sexist comment. It's about wearing less does not help. That's one thing. And in fact, today, you pay more money for dresses for women that have less fabric. They expose more of the body and you pay more, much less fabric. Play, if you talk about, add to this is lahu, because football, soccer as they call it, in the American context, as an example, it became a huge business. Tickets could be in the thousands of dollars. Football players have private jets. Nothing is haram about this. It's basically why you pay hundreds of millions of dollars for players. So it's not anymore about people being active. And when people buy the tickets, they are providing for those clubs and for those players. The problem with this is that's going to distract, and I know this for a fact, it distracts some kids from studies, from a serious life. They simply would like to gloss over education and just simply jump into a club and just become professional and make that money. Good for them. But it destroys basically the future of generations who simply rely on making it in sports. Amusement parks, amusing oneself all the way to the grave, literally. And you have the concept of fun. Weekend, it has to be fun, partying, and people might be depressed after that. The day after, luxury. I don't know why people. If it's really about knowing the time, you can look at your phone. You can look at the clock tower, of course, if you are in office, or you can look at your phone if that's, or if you need to have a watch, you can have a watch. If it's about time, but people pay tens of thousands of dollars and sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars. I was walking in Berlin and I've noticed that there were two Rolex stores across from each other, literally on like both sides of the street. It's the same company selling the same watch, but two Rolex shops. It means that there are enough customers to have such two stores in this place. Why do you buy the Rolex and you brandish it and people steal it? Literally, it does happen. Thieves know about these brands much more than the average person. Luxury, the cars that we even stopped knowing their names, have a good car that will carry you and you don't carry it if you can afford it. Family based car, I'm not saying that it's haram to have a sports car, but it's going to invite you to press the pedal and to try it. And these could have speeds and that could reach hundreds of kilometers, and we can hardly find a place where we can drive 70 kilometers, 90, but usually you have enough traffic jam that your speed is much less than that, almost stalling. Luxury, you pay for the name much more than you pay for the, of course you need good quality, that's fine, but rest assured you pay for the name, the brand. And ask anyone who's in the business of advertisement, the cost, the added cost from advertisement is much more. You talk about cereal, it's the advertisement, you pay for the advertisement. Clothing is the same. Mutual boasting, that's exactly why you pay and you buy these luxury items. And constant, people are on social media and they would like to compare. And that's very distressing because social media people put things that they never reflect. But maybe not using they never. Usually they don't. They put things that they go to on a vacation, and you compare. You say that I'm stuck here. I have no vacation. I cannot afford, or I don't have the time, or I don't have the money, or whatever. But you don't know that during this vacation, how do they really feel, and then the vacation ends. It's just like the notion of the honeymoon. I'm not saying people shouldn't have honeymoons. To the contrary. But a honeymoon, by comparison, what's next? You go for a couple of days on a honeymoon and the rest of your life together. Where's the honeymoon? If you don't build a life that is sweet, build a life that is there is service, build a life where you are not looking at what you get from it but what you give, boasting, ego, and competition in wealth and children. You'd like to increase. Always you try to increase. If you have a valley full with gold, you would wish for another one and another one and another one. But the delusion, you would leave all this behind. There's a story about someone in the Arab world, and those who narrated the story, they knew details that this person owned half a neighborhood in the capital city, in the capital of that country. But he would not spend on his family. He simply wanted to increase his wealth. تكاثر في الأموال. Even he deprived them of, unfortunately, of fresh meat, just simply regular meat like beef, like ground beef. And one day he was invited to dinner, and he went to a palace. And he asked the host, he did not know him, but are you a prince? He said no. Are you a minister? He said no. Are you? He said, wow. Like he was asking him, where did all this come from? And he said simply, he marries widows of people, of men who were very rich, and it became apparent from that talk that they did not know each other before, but he was waiting for this man to pass away so that he could ultimately approach his wife and marry her. So he was accumulating wealth, and ultimately it's going to go to somebody else. Not that he would inherit, but he's a kind of a gold digger, if you will. The delusion is that at the moment of death, you don't take anything with you. And the shroud of death, I'm talking about Muslims, the shroud of death doesn't have pockets. You don't need pocket money. There's no way you can. And it was really a very silly idea for the ancient Egyptians, who would include all the gold and the servants and the animals, and as if they will use them in the other life, in the underworld, or whatever they used to think. And you can see how this drug boss in Mexico, he was killed, leader of a drug cartel, the leader. He was killed, and they made sure to say that his coffin had gold or golden or whatever. It doesn't make much difference. Nice aluminum, fancy wood, doesn't make much difference. Death is death. He's not going to enjoy his grave because it's a golden coffin. And your children, they could become your source of misery. This is not against not having. This is not against not having children. It's not against having children, okay? But look at Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam when he was begging his son to hop into the ark. And he said, I'm going to resort to a high mountain, to materialism. سآوي إلى جبل يعصمني الماء, that will protect me from the fire, from the water that was rising. The flood, the story of the flood. Ya bunay, he just, as a father, his heart was broken. When your children, if they fail your life, no matter what you achieve, no matter what you achieve in your life, if your children fail, it's going to destroy you. And if you only pay attention to play, amusement, luxury, mutual boasting, competition in the material realm, in consumerism, obviously you are not going to spend time on raising the children well. Where's the role of adab? There is the role of spirituality. So you are basically producing a consumer. That's what it is. It could be the digital. People buy their children and their electronic gadgets, especially phones, very early, and they buy them the latest version. And the companies will make sure that you will have at least one more version every year with more features, more apps, and they convince you. And people in the United States, for example, I don't know about some other places, when there's a new, for example, iPhone, they just go and they might spend the night in long lines so that they could be the first to buy in the morning. Same thing when they say that there are sales with it could be wedding dresses, and see all these young ladies lining up very early in the morning so that they could buy dresses in advance where there is no even prospect for marriage. And they were convinced to delay their women, unlike men. Men have a longer, in principle. They could simply have children even when they are way past their 30s and 40s, and 50s and 60s. The ladies have a shorter biological window, BA, MA, and you just simply go up the professional ladder. And now you are in your 30s, and if you become desperate to get married, then you will just marry. The pool shrinks, and then you have hard time getting pregnant, and then you become depressed. In vitro fertilization doesn't work. You have the money, you have the degree, so even when we talk about competition in wealth and children, sometimes we don't even know how to do it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the Razzaq, is the sustainer, is the provider, in the absolute sense. But I'm talking about what are the priorities. And all this is compared to the following. This is like rain that causes plants to grow to the delight of the planters. So lush green and beautiful, but later the plants dry up and you see them wither. Then they are reduced to chaff. They are reduced to chaff. Doesn't really this remind you? You need to separate the chaff from the wheat. Where's the wheat? When you say لعب, له, زينة, تفاخر, تكاثر, where's the wheat in all this? What have you prepared for the hereafter? And the higher the responsibility, when you become responsible for a whole society, when you become a leader of a whole society, one should feel pity for those leaders, because they are going to be asked not only about, each one of us will be asked about, for example, his family. I will ask for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness. You'll be asked about the larger family, the society, the country, leading your country to war after war after war. The world is less safe with all these conflicts ongoing. So they'll be reduced to chaff. All of this out of a sudden doesn't have any weight. And hereafter there will be either severe punishment or forgiveness and pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whereas the life of this world is no more than a delusion of enjoyment. People, because they don't want to be serious, they don't want to be spiritual, they simply would like to be only tending to the material realm, to consumerism, and they neglect the spiritual part, the spiritual component. As a human being, you cannot be reduced to that which is matter. You ignore the spiritual part and you will become depressed. and you go to a psychiatrist, and you will be given, and they will think that is an imbalance, and you'll be given medicine to boost your dopamine and serotonin, and then you'll get used to that. Why do you think people take drugs and then take again and take again? It's the delusion. It does boost their dopamine and serotonin, oxytocin, in ways that we don't even understand, and it does bust their brain. And this is why now, if you could just, okay, so what should we do? So here we have play, amusement, luxury, mutual boasting, competition in wealth and children. So what should we do? In the next verse it says, سابقوا جنة عرضها كعرض السماء والأرض وعدت الذين آمنوا بالله ورسله ذلك فضل الله يؤتيه من يشاء والله ذو الفضل العظيم. So compete. In the previous verse, there's competition in wealth and children. Here it says, compete with one another for forgiveness from your Lord and a paradise as vast as the heavens and the earth. That's not a delusion. And that's not temporary. This life is temporary. This life, in a sense, is that it is superficial. There is something superficial. It's a very thin layer, almost like it's a shell. You're not going for the pearl. You're not going for that which is valuable. سابقوا لمغفرة من ربكم. So compete with one another for forgiveness. وجنة عرضها كعرض السماء والأرض, and the paradise as vast as the heavens and the earth. وعدت الذين آمنوا بالله ورسوله, prepared for those who believe in Allah and His messengers. This is the favor of Allah. He grants it to whoever He wills, and Allah is the Lord of infinite bounty. Here it is limited, there it is unlimited. Here it is temporary, there it is eternal. Here the enjoyment comes always with a price. Over there, there is no price. And I'm saying, okay, you can put it this way, and you can see where this argument goes. If you enjoy very hot, spicy food, you'd love the taste, but your intestines will suffer, and within the next 24 hours, you'll go through some pain. It's going to be burning. Here, every enjoyment comes with a price. There, every enjoyment is pure. It is eternal bliss, and this is the real competition. Again, almost like a disclaimer, this is not against having, a certain degree of comfort. This is not against attaining. To the contrary, I wish basically we have Muslim billionaires who one day they think about establishing universities, and the next day they think about clinics and hospitals, and the third day they think about a region that needs infrastructure, and the fourth day they think about research for vaccines, new vaccines for diseases, supporting research in that field, and the fifth day they think of a public library, and the sixth day they think of a playground for children, etc. I hope this is really, but the idea that Allah did. So when they do it, and when they do it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, إنما الأعمال بالنيات, literally the very first hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari, hadith niyat. إنما الأعمال بالنيات وإنما لكل امرئ ما نوى. Verily the action will be judged according to intention, because sometimes people act to nourish their ego. It is not for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and one should be wary of that. Inshallah, in the next session we'll begin with verse 22. Till then, subhanakallah wa hamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.